Yeah, thank you for being my guest on such short notice, man. I really
Oh,
appreciate
no worries, man. No worries. I luckily literally didn't have anything to do today until later on. So when you asked the time, it was perfectly cool.
it. Beautiful. How you doing? How was your birthday?
I mean, not being able to do anything, being out here in LA was, blah. But I went out for a beer with a friend of mine, and that was pretty much cool. So I did something instead of nothing at all.
Well, that's cool. Well, I guess for people outside of LA, you can still go out for a beer. You just have to sit outside somewhere, right? We're
Yeah, and you can go. I mean, I'm here in LA. I'm in LA right now. And so, like, I went to Yard House. Like, if you go to Yard House in Burbank, you can sit out. They put everything outdoors. So you can
right,
do it there. So,
right. That's the same around here. Everything around here that I've seen and everywhere else is these places are opening up sidewalks and side streets, and
yeah.
you know
Yeah.
people can so places can stay in business. You know,
Yeah. I mean, they got to do what they got to do in this day and age. Let's just be real.
absolutely. So we're gonna have a lot of fun things to talk about, and maybe some not fun things to talk about. But I want to get your little intro out here. I'm just gonna condense this and paraphrase it because there's a lot of you send me this guy's doing a lot of stuff, people. He was a professional wrestler. Uh,
Back at it now.
and
Back at it
and
now.
he retired. Oh, you are back at it. Okay, so he's a
Hmm.
professional wrestler and comedian, actor, and host. I added that. You may have seen him on Sirius XM Radio. He hosts his own podcast called the Mad Titan Podcast, and he's originally from Chicago,
Born and raised.
which is great. I like that. That always gives me comfort. My very funny pro comic buddy, Mr. Jay Washington. Great to
Thank
have
you for having me. Thank you for having me.
it's always strange to do those intros. Like, I'm not a host. I'm not like a good host type host. I hated hosting comedy shows. I don't know how you feel about hosting comedy shows. You might be natural at it.
I actually love hosting comedy shows. You know what? I actually do. It's something for me personally about being responsible for that energy in the room for getting the show going. Because if the host, like, I don't always want to host. I sometimes want to go up and do a set and have fun and just chill and then watch the show. But as a host, it's like you're responsible for keeping that energy going. Like if a comic does well, bring the next comic right up. If a comic doesn't, unfortunately, you got to bring that show back. And so that is what it is.
Yeah, you came up through black clubs, obviously.
Actually, no.
You came through the white
Actually,
club.
no. So I tried to start in the black clubs and I just couldn't get it. I couldn't make them laugh like I thought I could.
It was hard.
And I thought I had to be a certain way and I was forcing myself too hard to try to be that. And so I started out in the mainstream clubs at Riddle's Comedy Club before it changed over and whatnot. I did that. And then I was doing a lot of the open mic scene in the showcases on the north side of Chicago. And from there, it literally built my confidence up to come do some of the black rooms, to do jokes and notes, which always was the hardest thing for me to do back home. Like that was one of my biggest hurdles I had to overcome. You know what I'm saying? Like that was one of those things I was like, if I can't make my own folks laugh, then what the hell am I doing? And so it was literally me coming up through that way and going that way. I'm not like everybody else who came up through those clubs and came up through that rank that I know that I came up with. Like I went the other way around. And it was once until I finally got comfortable being me and not trying to be anybody else. Like I love every comic that's ever come through there, and they all had their own styles. And I was trying to figure out, I gotta have a style that fit like this instead of just being me. And being me
Everybody,
became the best thing possible.
everybody goes through that. Everybody goes through that. I think, but when you're a young comic, you beat yourself up. You're like, gosh, if I can't make my own people laugh, what the fuck am I doing? But
Mm-hmm.
those are just rough places to make people laugh. I mean, it is a much harder. It can be for a new comic, for a young comic. It can
Oh
be.
yeah, you learn a lot through it. You learn that some black people, we so dope with we're so unique and I love our humor. We're so to the point where you better make me laugh. We so hard, we such a hard ass. We'll go to a comedy club and be like, you better make me laugh. We'll be like, yo, you paid to come
I didn't
laugh.
come.
Like
I didn't come pay here to watch you learn to do this. Saying to you, Jay Washington, you're not going to learn to do this on my dime. You got to get
right,
back when you.
right.
Yeah, I get it. I had done stand up for 5 years before I ever stepped foot in a black comedy club, and I watched comics who I know, John Gold, who we may have on later, who actually started, Johnny Gold, I think he goes by. I don't know if you know him.
I can say I do.
Okay, he's does a lot more Orange County stuff, but his first stand-up was in Mixed Nuts Comedy Club, and they would boo him off. They would boo him the fuck off, and I mean
Wow.
weeknights, not weekends. And now he's very, very funny, but there was nobody to say to him, to give him the guidance. This might not be the first place you want to start. You might want to go to a place where they're a little more forgiving if you're new, and you haven't learned to play the music.
Well, you know what? I think the thing too, but I think the thing, not to interrupt, I think the thing about that is you want those places too that's gonna bust your ass, that's gonna boo you, that will force you. Like I was still going to Jokes and Notes, even though I was doing everything else. I was still going. I never avoided it directly. Like I was still going to Wednesdays because the Wednesday nights were the open mic night, and I used it in quotes because it was more so like a showcase night. And so those were the nights when you had to prove you knew what you were doing on that stage. Like Mary Lindsay, the owner, she had the number one rule, like you are not bringing notebooks, notepads, any of that stuff on my stage. You need to know your jokes. And so it would force you to learn your material and be adaptive with it. And I always used that even when I went other places. You know what I'm saying? The lessons there. And then again, you would have crowds who would boo you. Or the worst thing that could happen that I ever had experience was with those crowds when I was learning was if a crowd does nothing. They don't boo, they don't talk, they do nothing. They don't want to invest any energy in you at all. That is a more heartbreaking feeling than anything else in the world.
Yeah, I think out here, that's a very white experience to have. I think the black clubs out here in LA, I didn't go through the black clubs in Chicago, but the ones out here, they'll just start having the conversation they wanted to have through your set.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, you have those comics who want to just like in the back talking and everything. But like the thing was with Jokes and Notes, Mary would have the comics go outside the showroom. You couldn't talk in that showroom.
I don't mean the comics. I mean the audience. The audience. If the audience is in a black room, they'll just start having the conversation they wanted to.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But again, it's about you being able to be strong enough that if they start talking, you corral that conversation and bring it back in.
So that's very fascinating. That, by the way, you can interrupt me. That's kind of how we do it. I mean, we just have overlapping conversations here. I know Zoom can be a little funny.
It is very weird, but it's cool. All good.
Okay, so yeah, don't yeah. So but that's interesting to me. I don't think we ever had a conversation about that. I mean, you and I, for those out there, Jay and I are acquainted through. We did a show together. Probably like we met. What is it, 4 or 5 years ago? When was that?
It's been a while. It's been a while.
Yeah, you had just moved here.
I think it was right out, yeah, because I moved here at the end of 2015, so it was probably around either that time or the beginning of 2016. Yeah.
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 And here's what was weird about that show, and sort of, I mean, maybe I'm sort of oblivious because we're all in our own little bubble, and I'm not impervious to that. That was the first show I'd ever been to where the booked show, I was booked, you were booked to feature on that show, and I was the headliner. And our show took place before the open mic. They had an open mic directly following our show.
Yep.
And I remember thinking, not processing it, but going, this is the weirdest fucking thing I've ever seen in my life. They just had an open mic following a booked show. And you do remember that.
I mean, I've done so many shows like that out here now. They all run together in a sense. I think that's the thing with a lot of shows. In LA, their show structure is so weird sometimes where it's like I've learned that in LA, the most valuable thing you can give as a comic is stage time. So if you got a show and then you run an open mic right after, you may not get a real crowd, but you think you have one because the comics or the open mic that came in and like, that's not good.
No, that's what I was just about to say was I hadn't processed it because I just thought it was a weird, quirky thing. The show was fine. It was a little difficult. It was a packed room and it was a little difficult. And I remember thinking to myself, how many of these people are comics or think they're comics? And how many of these people are here to see comedy?
Mm-hmm.
And what it comes down to, for those of you out there, in my estimation, is the audience have all become comedians. That's what's happened. So in order to have a crowd of people watching the professional comedy part of the show, they had to say to the open micers, "You come, and then afterward you might get on." And that is a sign of that was a sign of the times even then. That was like, holy shit, Dave Chappelle and Bill Burr are not going to have to deal with this. Chris Rock's not going to have to deal with this. But Stephen Lolli, who can only fill maybe 75 seats in Wichita, is like, I might be the fuck, you know what I mean?
Right.
That I might be the so anyway, yeah, so that's really not major stuff though. But what are you doing with yourself these days, my friend? Tell me about what you're doing to keep busy and such.
Oh man, I am literally the internet has literally kept me busy throughout all of this. I do a lot of online hosting and guest correspondence. I was doing a lot of stuff back in the day for like I do still do stuff in Nerdist and all these different networks and channels. And so they're asking me to do a lot of different things. So I do a lot of that. That keeps me busy a lot. My own show that I do on Tuesdays with my co-host Winston Marshall. We do our show called Blurs in the Hood every Tuesday. That, a lot of self-tape auditions because of everything that's going on. Back working out, doing a lot of workouts and being back in the ring training. So doing all that. So that's why I say, yeah, I'm back as a pro wrestler. I've been back for like a year and a half now, but still training on top of that, making sure my kids are good because I'm a dad and my son's in Indianapolis, my daughter's in Tacoma, Washington. So making sure they're good. It's so much that even though some of this should have been a downtime, I've kept it being so busy. Like I told you before, like I was telling you earlier, later on, I got stuff to do today. I got stuff to do tomorrow. I got all this stuff, and I'm just trying to keep myself busy in the midst of all this because I know me, if I'm idle, I go crazy.
Well, you were pretty busy before this happened. I could see just from your social media. I feel like I would see you doing Marvel commentary for Marvel
Yes.
movies that were coming out. Tell us a little bit about that.
So that's where the podcast came out. The Mad Titan podcast is about I cover the Marvel and DC TV shows and movies. I always call it barbershop talk for nerds, and so I've always been a nerd since I grew up. No matter what, I always tell people I'm a nerd. I've been a nerd, little geek since my younger days on the South Side of Chicago, and so I get to talk about what I love and break down the movies and the TV shows. And the beautiful thing has happened where I've garnered respect from those entities, with people who work on the movies, people who work on the TV shows and the films. And so I get to have commentary on them. I get to do early screenings and just, do reviews on them and whatnot. And it's fun. It's fun. It's one of those things that keeps my voice out there, gets people to know me from a whole different side. And also everybody's like, damn, well, when we going to see you on one of these shows? I'm like, hey man, listen, if the call comes, I'll be ready for it, but that's why I'm putting in the work now. So that part of me has been a big part that I never thought would be the catalyst to help me move my career as much as it has. But I'm grateful for it.
Cool. What was it like to grow up a nerd on the South Side of Chicago?
Get talked about a lot, but it's also, you find people, you get talked about a lot and joked about, but that's how we do. We always joke with each other. But you find people who have those similar interests, and you get introduced to more things you didn't know growing up. Like there were certain characters I didn't know about because I just thought certain comic books and characters were just these in this circle. And so then when you move forward and you see more, you're like, oh, wow. And then people introduce you to other ones. And so now you've got this whole new world in front of you. And then you find out they're not just this new world, it's new worlds. Because now you're not just reading DC, you're reading Marvel or vice versa. And then now you're not just reading those, you're getting introduced to other comics like Image and Dark Horse and all these different things, some of which may have been around then and some might not. But I'm just using those examples. And you get this, and it's so fun, man. And it's because it also, when I grew up on the South Side, it was very violent. It was very dangerous outside. So I wasn't able to go outside as much as I wanted to as a kid. So to have those will be ways I pass the time, myself and my younger brother, who also had his video game system.
Okay. Marvel or DC? Let's just get this out of the way. What's your do you
I'm
have
a Marvel dude. I'm more
okay.
of a Marvel dude.
Let's just talk nerd stuff for a minute. I'm not a nerd, but I don't know if we have a little age gap. I don't know if I'm just a nerd, what the term would be, like a nerd. Like I like dipping into nerd shit. But
Okay.
I'm not a nerd. I wasn't a nerd, but I love fantasy. I love science fiction. I love superhero stuff from childhood. Now, when I was a little kid, DC dominated the movies. Christopher Reeve is Superman. Michael Keaton is
Mm-hmm.
Batman. By the way, I still think the best Batman is that first.
Oh, I think a lot of people, the best live action, the best live action that you see is Michael Keaton. It's hands down.
Yeah. My friend George made a good point. I'm going to tangent off here. He made a good point. He goes, the reason that we loved. He's a little older than me, but he goes, the reason we loved the Batman show with what's his name, Caesar.
Adam West.
Yeah, with Adam West, and the movie, the first movie of Batman, is because the villains are so happy to be tormenting Batman. They're just laughing their ass off and gleeful, and there's like, it's funny. There's funny shit going on.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what you would say to that.
I think the thing about the DC villains, the DC universe in itself is so dark. It's just dark in general. And so torture in itself with its villains are like the main thing. Like you have villains who want to torture in Marvel too, but not to the level that they do. They have more psychopathic, villains. A lot of them who are very mental. Like they'll get in your head more than anything else. That's the biggest form of torture they'll do. Marvel has a few villains like that, but they're just straight at you like, this is what I want. This is what I'm trying to do. DC's villains will play games to torment you. They'll play with your head and play a lot of psychological games. So yeah, man, look, DC got some terrible villains.
That's so interesting. Cool. Well, now Marvel is dominating the movies,
Mm-hmm.
and really beginning with Iron Man, who was a completely, for you, probably someone you knew, but for most of the general population, Iron Man was not the most.
Oh, he was a C-list character.
Yeah. So that performance that Robert Downey did, and that sort of was like a defibrillator for Marvel movies.
And his career.
His career, yes.
And let's just be honest, and his career. Like nobody, like Jon Favreau had to almost beg and plead Paramount and Marvel to be like, let them use Robert Downey Jr. because of his track record. They were like, no, we don't want to. And so it gave Marvel something, because Marvel had been doing movies for the longest. Like there's been Marvel movies, but it hadn't captivated the world until Iron Man.
Right.
It wasn't something about till Iron Man till everybody was like, okay, this is cool. Then you get The Incredible Hulk, which is a Marvel movie, but not a Marvel Studios movie. You get Thor, then you get Captain America, and then you finally get the Avengers movie, and everybody's like, well, damn, they really are doing this. And then you get the post-credit scene in the first Avengers, and you're like, oh, this is going to keep going. And then you have DC, which is like, all right, cool, we're going to change up what we were doing. Now we're going to have our own universe. And so then you get Henry Cavill's Man of Steel. And instead of DC saying, let's build up our heroes the way Marvel did, DC was like, we need to hurry up and get to the Justice League. And everybody was like, don't you do this. Right. Build this up.
They're chasing.
And so, yeah, so then it was like, build it up. And then they didn't do it the right way. And it kind of fell back. And now they're backtracking. And they're generating steam on their own, which they should have done because they have great characters and they know how to tell the stories, and now they're building that up. So, but Marvel made a thing that was just like for bananas.
Yeah, they took a C-list character from their comic books and ran circles around Batman and Superman. That's to me amazing, because
again, it was just easy to take I think it was when you knew the plan. It wasn't just, we're just going to make this movie and then see what happens. You had a plan. We're going to put all these movies, we're going to make these movies interconnect and lead to a big thing. Then we're going to keep doing that to a bigger thing. Then we're going to keep doing.
You really think that was the plan from the beginning? I don't think they knew that when they were making Iron Man, that they were going to.
Iron Man had an idea. So it was an idea of they could do it. But Iron Man had to succeed at the box office. And it had to be as well received as it was. If Iron Man wasn't well received or was a bust, none of this happens. It doesn't go past the Avengers. You might have gotten the movies that were set to come out already. You might have got the Captain America and the Thor movie and the Incredible Hulk, because that's Universal, but you wouldn't have got them connecting. You wouldn't have got them connecting. They'd have came out, but they just would have been their own movies. But if Iron Man doesn't become a success, then there's no reason to go ahead and say, well, let's try to make this bigger universe. Because now you playing with house money, and it's not a good thing to play with.
So can you give me your top 5 Marvel movies?
Surely can. Captain America, the Winter Soldier, Black Panther, Captain America, Civil War, Thor, Ragnarok, Guardians of the Galaxy, Volume 1.
Wow. Okay.
I'm sorry. Let me take Guardians. Let me go back. Let me take Guardians out, push Thor to number 5, Avengers Infinity War number 4.
Oh man, that was well, our producer will put that up on the screen for people so they can have that, that we actually have a producer who will give us that graphic that will probably be playing right now as I'm talking. I would say mine are, this is, by the way, a shotgun thing. I'm just thinking this right as I ask you, but definitely the first Iron Man, which I just thought was so funny. And definitely the first Avengers movie, whatever.
Oh, the Avengers movie was so lighthearted because, again, it was so lighthearted, but so much action. And again, it took something that nobody believed they would ever see on TV and on the big screen, excuse me. You never thought you were going to see a blockbuster movie with Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, the Incredible Hulk. What?
Pretty cool.
I mean, yeah, you got Hawkeye and Black Widow, but at the time they're not these big level characters. Like, none of them really were. The Hulk was always that guy. Hulk was always the guy. Thor would have his moments, but to have Captain America, who even wasn't an A-list character,
Really?
No, Cap was not he may have been a B-list, but he was never a direct on A-list character.
Spider-Man, the Incredible Hulk, and Captain America were the only 3 Marvel. I wasn't that into the comic book stuff, but they were the only 3 I was aware of as a kid. Just as a note. Also, I want to throw in there Captain America Winter Soldier is in my top. That's just a phenomenal.
That's why it's my number 1. Captain America Winter Soldier is my number 1 because if you take out the superhero element, it's still the perfect espionage movie.
Yeah, it's the perfect espionage movie. The superhero, basically.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. It's an espionage movie with superheroes, and it's like it doesn't fail. Everybody's like, this movie is just good.
Yeah, man, and it also gets into the real stuff about our government letting Nazis into the fucking country after World War II. So there's some very subversive stuff in that movie. That's cool,
but that's
man.
The thing about comic books, though. Comic books have always reflected our current society. The reason the characters.
Ooh, Jay, you're freezing up on me, brother.
Let me see. Hold on. Oh.
You're freezing up.
Okay, I figured out why that probably was.
Okay.
Are we good?
Yeah, I can see you and hear you. If there was something you could do on your end, that's
cool. I fixed it on my end. You had those characters like that Stan Lee made in the X-Men, which were amalgams of minorities in America, of how Black people and brown people, minorities were treated. And comic books have always mimicked life. So that's why when people get into the argument of take politics out of my comic books or take politics out of my geek stuff, it's like you never were paying attention. They've always involved politics.
Well, when it's good, people don't notice it.
Or when it doesn't, it's not even when it's good. It's when it doesn't agree. When it agrees with them, it's fine. When it agrees with them, it's fine. But when it doesn't, that's when it's like, take it out of it. And it's like, it's always been there.
Yeah. That's a good conversation to have about how people can dig it or not dig it, and why it makes people feel uncomfortable or comfortable. There was a lot of subversive shit in the 80s. Just being a kid in the 80s growing up, there was a lot of stuff that was not subversive and was, Reagan era bullshit. But there was a lot of subversive shit because the people making the entertainment, the comedy, and the action movies were from the 60s. They were from the 60s and 70s. They were children of the 60s and 70s. So, like, even when you watch, what did I just see? Predator, which is one of my favorite underrated movies with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
The first one is so good.
It's so good. It's very smart and clever. I don't know if it's because they had to do. I just love watching stuff like that, and I think there was a lot of schlock, but there were also like Total Recall and Predator and Terminator, uh, The Running Man. You know, just
Mm-hmm.
Arnold Schwarzenegger's movies during his career were really subversive. The Running Man is a really fucking subversive movie, man. I don't know if you've seen
Oh,
it.
if you look at how the government controls everything, and they make a program to make criminals the stars just to keep
Over
people
reality,
happy from revolting, you're
we didn't
like,
have reality shows back then. That was a completely projecting what was going to later happen.
yes, it was. Yes, it was.
Yeah, celebrity game show host. You know,
Yep.
home audience judging. Home audience, let us know who you want to
Who you want
see.
to see kill these people?
Yes, subversive shit, man. We
Yeah,
were
the Running
watching
Man is. I've
RoboCop.
noticed a lot of people have been looking at these movies nowadays and been like, wow, were these directors visionaries knowing what was going to happen in a sense? Because the Running Man is similar to what becomes the Hunger Games, and again, it looks at the cultures and it
Yeah.
looks at society.
I don't think they were. My intuition tells me I don't think they were projecting what was going to happen. I think they were trying to warn us of what they hope doesn't happen.
That sounds more like it. Yes, it does.
You
Excuse
know,
me. Yes, it does.
it ended up happening anyway. You
I
know.
mean, they were like, look, we can go down this road if y'all don't change. Please don't. This is what it'll look like. And then everybody was like, no, let's just go down there. Let's just go for it.
Yeah, I love Blade Runner, but I don't want to live in Blade Runner.
I don't think anybody does.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody does.
So that's cool, man. So when did you get your start in stand up? Just out of curiosity.
So I started in stand up in 2008. And it was only because I'd been wrestling straight for 8 years. I'd been pro wrestling straight for 8 years, and I started accumulating a lot of injuries, of course. And at one point, I worked for a chiropractic company. I worked in their medical billing department, and we got free chiropractic care. And it was the first time I'd ever got an adjustment. And when you first time you ever go, they give you X-rays and stuff. And so I remember getting X-rayed, and the chiropractor, who was a black woman, I'll never forget. She was like, "Come in for a second." And I went anytime I see a black woman go, "Come in for a second. Something's not right." She was like, "You see that?" And pointed to a picture of my X-ray, and I was like, "Yeah." She was like, "That's your neck." I was like, "Oh, my neck looks straight. It look good." She was like, "Your neck is supposed to bend like a backwards C. Yours is going straight up and down." She said, "I don't know what it is you're doing, but you're gonna have to stop. Otherwise, your vertebrae are gonna fuse together." So I didn't tell her that I was a pro wrestler and I was taking chair shots to the head and doing all type of dumb stuff. So then, I started because again, I had my son at the time. So I'm like, I want to be able to do stuff with my son. I don't have money to afford surgery and all this stuff to get the fusion taken away. So stand up happened because I used to just make funny statuses on Facebook and just talk about whatever. I never was a comedian in the title. And there was a woman who had a production company back in the day, and she was like, "Yo, you ever thought about doing stand up?" I was like, kind of, but I really would never know how to get into it. So we had a meeting, and then she invited me to do my first open mic where I was like, "Oh, I just got to write 5 minutes worth of material. That's going to be easy," because I knew how to just talk trash and make jokes. So then I did it, and then I actually crushed my first open mic, which was the worst thing that could have happened for me because there was a crowd and everything. It was a showcase open mic, but it was the first time I did it, and that was the worst thing that could have happened because I had an ego then. I was like, I know how to do this. Came back the next week, wrote another 5 minutes, and I bombed so hard. I was like, whoa, wait, what? Just hold on. I'm the
Right.
same dude.
Right.
But that forced me to do it. And so I slowly started pushing myself to be better at stand-up. And then wrestling, I would still have the opportunities to wrestle. But again, I'm dealing with the next situation. But stand-up's coming. And then you got this thing where stand-up is starting to pay if I'm in the right spots. Well, pro wrestling on the indie level doesn't really pay. So then the pay comes, then I can think about no pay and less injury. And then I'm starting to do the physical therapy rehab of my neck. So stand-up started happening more. And by that time, I started being able to hit the road, and I was doing these shows. I was featuring. I was building up my time, and then I was able to do small like C rooms and headline those, and build that up and build that reputation and be funnier. And then it was like my buddies who were wrestling was like, "Yo, so what are you doing?" I was like, "Man, I'm doing stand up right now, and it's paying. It's paying the bills. Like, yo, I love what we can do in the ring, but yo, this is making money." The stand up opened the door for me to finally get an agent. who, when I met my agent, I started doing auditions. And then I started booking commercials. When I started booking commercials, I was like, oh, I can book work too. I'm good enough to do this. Again, I don't have to deal with low pay and physical injury, even though I love it. It's in my soul. It's in my DNA in pro wrestling. But now stand up and acting are making a way for a future for my son at the time. And then things happen. And eventually I have my daughter. So like, then I'm like, okay, I'm rolling. But then I get out here. I move out here and I meet a lot of people who are currently still wrestling, people who I've met throughout the years.
Which was what year? What year you moved out here when?
I moved out here in November 2015, the end of November 2015.
You've been a stand-up for about 7 years. You'd been messing
At the time, yeah.
You had become a pro stand-up by the time you moved out here.
By the time I moved out here. But it wasn't until I'd done the clubs in the city. I'd done a lot of stuff in the Midwest. I'd hit the road sometimes. I'd come out here, do some shows. I'd do some shows in New York. But I'd done everything I felt like I needed to do in the Midwest. But then I had booked Spike Lee's Chi-Raq. I was one of the main characters in that. And that was like, yo, that's the thing I need. I needed something under my name if I'm going to come to LA. And that was the moment I came out here. And then when I moved out here, I was still doing stand-up. I had to start from scratch out here, get people to know who I am. But I'm building that up. I finally get an agency, so I'm still working the acting angle. I'm still working the stand-up angle, all of these. And then I start meeting all these pro wrestlers. Some I met from when I was on the road with them, when we were doing these shows, and some who people had introduced me to. And I find out they're still wrestling out here, and I forgot about it. Now, I'm staying away from it for a while, but at one point, I just was like, I feel good. This was after, so I'm sorry, let me give you the time frame. Fast forward to February 2018, I developed an abscess in my throat that almost ruptured. I have to rush to the hospital. I ended up having an emergency tracheotomy. They had to cut open a tracheotomy and cut into my lymph nodes to drain pus and air out of my neck. So I'm in the hospital for like 2.5 weeks. In the process of being like a week and a half, process of being in a hospital and being sick, I lose all this weight. I lose like 41 pounds. Then I start going on this diet and getting healthier. And then I start losing more weight. And now, come like 2019, I'm like, I feel real good. My body doesn't hurt. Maybe I could try to get back in the ring. So then I start finding a spot to train. And I remember I had to start all over with that again too, because though I knew how to do certain things, my body wasn't familiar with it anymore. So now I'm starting to get that back, get the wheels back with that. And I start having matches again and doing shows. And now people out here like, wait, you back wrestling too? What else are you doing? I was like, well, I'm still doing stand-up. I'm still acting. I'm still, I'm hosting on stuff. I'm doing this and I'm wrestling. They're like, how are you doing all this all? I'm like, through the grace of God. I really don't know. Because I can't, for me, myself, I don't know. And so then I get back into it, and then stand-up is still happening. Because now stand-up, when I go to certain spots, I'm working material or I'm doing a show, I've been at certain spots where stand-up opened the door for me to be on Netflix for the first time. And that was at an open mic. Me not BSing around, knowing how I want to work my jokes in my voice and doing that. And so the journey for stand-up I'll tell everybody, stand-up is my foundation. Without stand-up, I wouldn't be doing anything else.
Right. Wrestling wasn't going to lead you to all these different avenues of expressing yourself and being seen and heard and creating these things.
Well, actually, wrestling can. The thing is, it can.
For The Rock, actually. So
not even going to those top tier athletes that we see, The Rock, John Cena, Stone Cold Steve Austin. Not even those. It can open the door because it gives you the creativity. If it wasn't for wrestling, I would never have my stage fright is not really there because of performing in front of people. The being able to talk on a mic easily is because of wrestling, because of wrestling promos. So that's why I tell people in life, the pro stand-up world and the professional wrestling world parallel each other so much, it's ridiculous, which is why I was able to deal with stand-up and a lot of the BS that comes with it and see it and be like, yep, I figured, because I've dealt with it in pro wrestling. And so wrestling can open some doors. You just have to be willing to make that push to make it open doors. You got to be just as like as you have to be willing to push yourself in stand-up, push yourself in acting. You got to push yourself in pro wrestling. It can happen. But then you might depend on the physical nature, because you got a lot of cockswole comedians and comedians who are in good shape. If you want to do more, if you want to try to go action, you can eventually get those opportunities from stand-up. Pro wrestling will put you in, depending on the character that you have, first and foremost, it'll put you in an action genre, no matter what, because you have that action background, playing someone being in the ring. But also you can talk. And then, depending on the person you are on the mic, you might start developing into comedic roles, i.e. a John Cena. John Cena works perfect in them because he's good, he's funny on the mic. The Rock is perfect on the mic. So you have those. So that's how they parallel. Stand-up can open so many doors, because also you don't have to go in front of the camera with stand-up. That's the beautiful thing about stand-up, because people who listen to the bits you write, they'll be like, your mind's creative. Now you're asked to do things, to join writers' rooms and become, writers' assistants and stuff like that.
Well, that's for sure. I've always found the stand-up, you become sort of like a 5-point threat, meaning you could be hired as let me put it to you this way. I started doing stand-up at 19.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have any idea it was going to lead me. I had some idea that if I was able to do this, it could open some doors for me, but I didn't really understand where I was going to end up, whether it was going to be a writer or an actor or a performer, a host of some sort, a weatherman. I mean, who the fuck knows? I just was hoping it would lead somewhere. And if people saw me do that, they would think, well, this guy could do this, that, or the other. A voice, that's another thing. A voice, you could be a voice actor nowadays through stand-up. So, but definitely my living has come through writing. Now, I had no idea it was going to go that way. Could have gotten some break as a stand-up or an actor, and I could have ended up appearing in things. But I did understand that by doing this sort of like writing, directing, and performing your own theater, which is what stand-up is, sort of.
Right.
You're showcasing a whole lot of dynamic ability. Even if you're bad at it, even if you're not good at it, somebody could see you do that and think, oh, this person is right for something I'm doing.
Yep.
To your point, I just got offered a movie, an independent film, to be in an independent film. And the woman who, she is a viewer of our podcast, by the way.
Okay.
I met her at a show, one of the least likely shows you would have ever imagined you would meet a filmmaker at. Literally a bar show where that's a pro-am. So open mic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's an open mic, basically. It's a very good one and a very friendly one, but how many open mics do regular audience even go to?
I think it's depending on with that. I think the thing is, as the comic who decides to run an open mic, you have to know where you're running for the potential of people. Because we all know how comics do it. They go to a bar and say, what's your least busy night? Right? And they say, cool, I can possibly fill this up if I have an open mic. I can bring comics in here who will buy drinks and blah, 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 the whole spiel they give them. But if you find places, I've learned, so let me say this. I heard when I first moved here, I was always hearing, yo, you got to be at the clubs. Everybody gets discovered at the clubs. They're at the clubs. It's at the clubs. It's at the clubs. And I was like, okay, cool. I thought about that for a second. But then when I started realizing, you go to these bar shows, you go to these smaller shows, you just have a conversation with people, not trying to figure out who they are or what they do. You find out somebody's a filmmaker, somebody's a producer, somebody does this, just from having a regular conversation with them. And you're like, oh, I get it now. It's not in these places. I'm in the town, in the place where I can be seen by anybody at any moment. I just have to be on my game when I'm there. That's what matters. And then that's when somebody can see and be like, yo, I'm doing this, blah, blah, blah. But I've also been the person where I'm like, if I met you, Steve, and you told me, well, I'm a professional writer. Okay, cool. Glad to hear that. So I see you like the Bears. My conversation with you is about you. I'm not trying to just lean on to you because of your career, because I want something out of you. If I'm going to develop a rapport with you, I'm developing a rapport with you. You and I both seen it where people were like, man, so you know what? I heard about you talking about you were writing movies. I'm actually writing a movie right now that maybe you can look over doing stuff like that. Like, no, I want to know the person for the person. And I've learned that person, because that's how I've always been since being back home in Chicago, where you'll meet somebody and connect with them and you never know because they like, yo, you're a genuine person.
Yeah, that's a tricky thing too, because especially a young artist who's desperate and broke, and they meet somebody who, you know, who could help them and influence their career. And so you get that. I remember being young and being new out here and making those mistakes of meeting somebody. I met Sidney Pollack. Um, Funny enough, I actually met Ellen briefly, Ellen DeGeneres on that. Um, and this was when I first moved out here, and she was definitely giving me a look like, you know, don't talk to me. But you know, there could be a number of reasons for that. But yeah, I was going to go up to her to say, hey, I would love you to you know, share my comedy with you, or I don't know. It was all opportunity. Have you ever been to one of these pitch meetings? I had a friend who used to take me to these pitch meetings where
I've always wanted to know what they entail, because I've always wanted to be, I've never been, so I've always wanted to know what's a pitch meeting like, so I could always be ready to when I have to have one, you know what I'm saying? I'm like, all right, so what do you have? I want to know exactly what you want to hear, how you want to hear it, and stuff like that. So I've never been.
okay, well, I will share with you this woman who brought me to this pitch meeting. A very reputable group of people who were putting this on, and they had I don't know if the guy was in development at ICM or what he was. I think he might have been an assistant there. I don't know if he was an agent or what. And I'll never forget his name. I won't mention his name on this podcast because I don't want to humiliate him any worse than he's already been humiliated. But I'm probably 300 or 400 people paid $25 or $50 to pitch their movie to this guy. And this guy just eviscerated every single person. It was a live auditorium. It was in a huge auditorium, and everybody would take turns going up, almost like a Conan movie where the serfs go up and make their offering to the king. And the guy was just it. I got to tell you, for the first like 30 minutes, it was entertaining because the guy was kind of funny, and he had a way. He was entertaining himself by just
Wow.
And just rejecting everybody right out, you know. And I wasn't there to pitch anything. I was just along with my friend. I had very quickly figured out you would be a fool to go up and pitch anything to this guy because he's only there to let you know, and he's letting you know this is the way the business is, whether you have something good or not. In a way, he was telling the truth to people. But
Okay.
he was a little too happy about it, if you know what I mean. Like
He got his jollies off of crushing your dream almost.
He was getting his jollies off of crushing
Oh.
dreams. And 400 people. And I remember the organizer of the event went up to him about an hour and a half in and goes, look, you don't have to, you've already, you know, an hour and a half was our event. You don't have to do any more if you don't want. We're so sorry we've gone over your time. And he was so happy to be there. He was like, oh no, as long as it takes, I'll go through all these people. Jay, he wanted to fucking destroy people. And I remember, I go, wouldn't it, and again, you know, over the 40 or 40 minutes I'm sitting there, I'm like, wouldn't it be funny if I went up last and I just pitched a movie where I just totally destroy this guy, where I just make fun of him. It's all about a movie about him.
Did you do it?
I did it, man. I did it. I went up and I pitched a movie about a low-level assistant at an agency who gets his jollies from going into pitch meetings and just destroying the dreams of other people verbally in front of them. And one day he's walking along and he's struck by lightning. I just made this shit up. You know, I just was off the side thinking how funny. He's struck by lightning and he isn't killed, but he's incapacitated and he completely loses memory of who he is. and he's in a hospital where he's taken care of by a very kind male nurse. And the male nurse is he doesn't really, nursing is not really his dream. His dream is to write movies. And so he shares all of his dreams and movies with this guy who become bonds with him, who really like feels for him. Anyway, so this is the movie. He ends up, the male nurse ends up, I forget what I fucking said, but basically I just eviscerated this guy. And I remember a woman coming up to me after that event and saying, if I wasn't married, I would sleep with you. She told me.
Well, damn.
Yeah. So truthfully, man, that was the beginning of me really becoming a comedian. Because I was like, this is me figuring out, this is who I am. I'm the guy who does that. That's who, you know what I mean? That was really, because the first 5 or 7 years you're showcasing, trying to impress people. And I was like, no, that's who I am. I'm the guy who does that. Anyway, that was a pitch meeting. What pitch meetings are like, though.
Oh, please don't tell me I froze. Did I freeze? Okay.
No,
I was hoping at the end of your story was going to be, so dude walked up to me and was like, I want to make that. Like, I was hoping that was in the end of the story.
I wish. It's still there. It's there. I wrote it out. I mean, I've got it there. At the end of this movie, by the way, the agent starts to get his abilities back. He starts to get his life back. He still doesn't remember who he is, but he starts to get his abilities back. And he's at Whole Foods one day. He gets out of the hospital and he's still sort of developmentally disabled. Mm-hmm. And he's runs into a guy at Whole Foods who says, you have the look. I could make you the next Adam Sandler. And he basically, what happens is, this is stupid, but he's basically sitting in judgment. He's sitting in judgment of God and the devil, and he's got a choice to make. He could be discovered as the next Adam Sandler, or he could support his friend who's the struggling writer. And he chooses his friend who's the struggling writer, and he's thrust back to earth, completely restored, and all of his physical abilities he remembers who he is and everything, except he's got to start back in the fucking mailroom. That's the end of that story. So,
wow.
That's what I pitched to him.
Wow. And he starts back in the mailroom. That's fucking amazing.
It's called Pitch Crashers.
Somebody call Vince Vaughn and Owen Wilson, get him on the phone. Because it's just like I said, I've always wondered how those things go, though. Seriously, because I've never been in them. I hear so many people like, man, I got to get this pitch meeting together. And I'm like, okay, I got it. I just was always wanting, they never tell you what it involves. They're just like, I got to get it together. And I'm like, I wonder what that process is like. Hey, how y'all doing? I'm Jay Washington. So the idea I have is a guy who blah, 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 da, da, da. And throughout this, he has this person, this person, this person. This is what happens. This person happens that. Here's what happens to him. Like, I'm wondering, is it all Latin? And nobody ever tells you out here. But that's what I've learned, too, about LA. People tend to keep things for themselves because they feel like if they tell you, it'll take away from them. And I've always believed knowledge is to be shared, not stored.
Yeah, I'm very careful about who I share shit with. I have to feel like the person, but just from PTSD, from people going behind my back and saying stuff about me, and I have to feel very safe. And when I feel safe,
that makes sense.
I've had some, and also like people who you think you trust, who are your friend, who then do stuff that is unsavory. I don't know if you've had that happen to you. Maybe you've been blessed and not had that happen to you yet, but
I've had it happen.
You have had it happen?
Yes, I have.
Yeah. And it's just jealousy. It's not even, or whatever that evil inclination is in people that they need to. What happened? Can you share that with us?
I've had ideas for a certain like shorts and whatnot, like small, like before Quibi was a thing with 10-minute shorts. I had an idea for like a show with a 10-minute idea. And I talked to what I thought was a friend because we got kind of cool out here. And I was like, yo, because we were talking about ideas. And I told him about that idea I had. And next thing I know, I heard that they were working on it. Now, granted, it fell through, but I'm like, wow, you legit snatched that out from under me. Like, we were talking about this together, and you were like, this is great. You were going off my ideas, and you were like, yeah, this could work, especially if you did this. And I didn't know that you were going to take all of that from what I told you and your add-ons and then go try to get it yourself. And I was like, yo, some people out here are fucking snakes.
You know, at least if this person would have called you and said, hey, I think I can get that made.
Right. That would have been a whole different ball game.
Right.
But that was karma coming around, being like, since you stole this from somebody who you could have brought in with you, it won't happen at all.
So I won't mention this there are some very famous people who are known for doing that in comedy.
I've heard of it. You know, I think it's really sad.
Yeah. So the funny thing is, and everybody's trying to, we're all here sort of trying to gain the favor of somebody or the eye or of somebody who will help us work. That's basically all that this is. Everybody wants to work and make a living here. Mm-hmm. And I had to send a reel to one of these folks. And I knew that this was this particular thing about this person. And I made sure to put in that reel that I made sure to leave out anything that could be easily repackaged.
Wow.
You know, because I had heard, again, the rumors might not even be true, but better to be safe than sorry. When you think I'm going to send my work, I'm going to send my best stuff, but maybe sometimes you want to leave out a joke that could be retold in a certain way.
Damn.
Anyway, I'm sorry that happened to you, brother, but Jay, audience, No Idea Zone audience out there, this is par for the course. If you're in show business, you're bound to go up against shit like this because people are not always operating on the most moral high ground.
Right.
I do want to ask you something and shift the conversation just for a second, because there's bad shit happened in the Midwest, and I'm sure you know about this, and I want to ask you about this. Just a few days ago, I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before, but 7 shots in the back, Wisconsin police.
Mm-hmm.
What do you know about this, and how do you feel, brother?
So Jacob Blake is a young man who was shot 7 times by a police officer while returning to his car, shot in front of his 3 kids. And the crazy part is the police were called for a domestic dispute, and Jacob Blake was breaking up a fight between 2 women. And so the police, when they pulled up, from what everyone's accounts are that when the police pulled up, he's breaking up the fight. The police pull guns on him. And so he's walking away like, yo, I ain't got nothing to do with this. I'm breaking this fight up, and he goes to his car. They tase him. He walks off while he's still walking because he's not under arrest. Then when he gets in his car, they're saying, oh, he's got a weapon. He had his keys in his hand. It was clearly seen his keys. They shoot him 7 times in the back. Again, to shoot 7 times means you were definitely trying to put somebody down. Wisconsin has always been racist. It just is what it is. Wisconsin, especially Kenosha, the show Lovecraft Country has brought up the phrase sundown towns. And for those who don't know what that means, those are towns in various states where if you're black or a person of color, your ass don't want to be caught out in the streets when the sun goes down because shit will go wrong. You will lose your life. You'll disappear, things like that. And it's crazy the amount of people I've seen on social media who have tried to justify every time there's a black man killed by the police or a black woman, they're always trying to justify it. And you can't justify 7 shots in somebody's back and saying that you were threatened as a police officer. Now, I know police officers have a dangerous job. That is the job they take. But also people like, oh, police officers' job is to prevent crime. They're not preventing crime. They come once a crime has been committed. 9 times out of 10, you don't call the police before a crime happens. You call it during the crime or after the crime. They're not there to prevent it. So for that cop to let off 7 shots and to say he feared for his life, he feared of a black man. And it's just, it is what it is. And we're seeing this over and over and repeatedly, and it's beyond frustrating. And then when you tell people, they're like, oh, well, if he would have just listened to the police, he wouldn't have died. Not following orders by the police is not a capital crime. It's
Yeah,
not.
it's not a reason to get shot in the back or
It's not a
any.
reason to get shot at all. It's not a reason to be shot at all, let alone in the back. So people got to stop trying to use their racist bullshit justifications, because that's all it is. Oh, if you just learn to listen to the police, well, I can play up a bunch of videos, and be honest, of a bunch of white men and women who've done the same shit, if not worse, and the police are either running away or subdue them gently and things like that. And then you can't say anything. And it's like, I've seen videos where a dude was brandishing a knife at a cop, and the cop is just like, back up, back up, back up, and moving around. Like, wait, that cop should really fear for his life. This dude has a brandished weapon coming at you, and yet you're the officer moving around and running away. So, people say it goes back to training, which it does, but I think this shit is more indicative of the overall symptom of America. It is also a shame that we are 3 months removed from the killing of George Floyd, where we've seen a police officer sit on a man's neck for 8 minutes, 46 seconds, laugh and giggle in the process too, and smirk. And a cop feels, even in this day and age, that it's okay to just shoot somebody 7 times in the back because, A, the Kenosha police won't have their body cams until 2024. So if it was not for people having their phones doing this, that cop would have been completely justified and walked away with nothing being said. It's a telltale of what America is. Nikki Haley goes on the Republican National Convention and says America's not racist. Bullshit. If America's not racist, why not use your first name? Nikki Haley's first name is Nimarata. She's Indian. Why not use your first name? Why be Nikki? Why be Nikki? And so it's indicative of what America is. And, people these past 5 years, not even just 4, these past 5 years, because even during the running for the 2016 election, it has opened the floodgates and said it's okay to be the racist country we once were. It is literally allowed to be said it's okay to go back and do this shit. Guess what? You can be a cop and kill somebody. I'm going to make sure you get off because I'm the president and I believe in what you do, and what you did was perfectly okay. That's what's happening. It's so frustrating. It's so frustrating.
The president gave a excuse me, I'm just going to interject one.
No problem.
2017, the president of the United States gave a keynote address to all of the precincts of police officers, huge police officer conference, where he said, to huge laughter and chuckles, make sure not to make sure not to be too kind to your suspects.
Yeah, I remember hearing that.
Yeah.
And so what's to stop anybody? So like literally, when you hear the endangered species list, you need to put the black man on there and the black woman, because it is almost like it's open season. Because if you can get away with killing a black man or woman, and if you're not and then people will say, well, what about all this black on black crime? Which black on black crime is not a fucking thing, because no one says white on white crime, Asian on Asian crime, Hispanic on Hispanic crime, et cetera, et cetera. It's not a thing. But when a black person does kill a black person, they're caught. They're brought to justice, or the streets catch them real quick. Unfortunately, when a cop especially has killed black people, we're giving them slaps on the wrist, or trying to find so many ways to say, well, they weren't wrong, why to vindicate why they did it, or trying to say, well, look at the record of this person that was killed. The record of that person has nothing to do with the moment in question, because when a police officer is called to the scene, they have no clue of a person's record. They have no clue who that person is. They just know the situation. So for people to sit there and say, oh, well, his record says he did this and did that and blah, blah, blah. So the fuck what? It don't matter at this point in time. At that moment in time, it don't matter. But people are consistently doing that, and it's frustrating, especially as a black man myself, having a black son and a black daughter, a black family members and friends. Like, our lives are always in jeopardy, it feels. People don't know about the talk black parents have to have with their black kids about their encounters with the police, because our talk is not just, be respectful and blah, 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 blah. It's to let them know, please do everything you can to make sure you present no possible threat, because your life is literally on the line. No other parents are having that. No other parents are having that conversation. No other parents are telling their kids, listen, if you meet the police, it's going to be a scary situation. No other black parent, no, I don't know of any people really, unless you're driving illegally, that when you see a cop car, the first thing comes to your mind is, are these the last moments of my life? Because that is literally black people's thoughts. And it's telling when that's what it is.
Well, prepare yourself for this. In the news today, they're trying to character assassinate Breonna Taylor for having a connection to a drug dealer at some point.
They've been trying to do that from jump, and it doesn't fucking matter. They've been trying to do that for the longest, because the fact is, it's already been proven when the cops bust in their house without a warrant, without identification, for which her boyfriend was rightly justified to start firing back, they had already had the person they were looking for in custody. They'd already had that person. So they can try with this character assassination shit all they want. Again, it never fucking fails. Whenever a black person is killed unjustly by the police, they're always trying to character assassinate. But then we'll sit there and go, well, I'm not racist. Yes, the fuck you are.
Well, my friend, we are in complete agreement. I'm glad that you got to say it and I didn't have to say it here. It's just disgusting. I would add to that, there is white supremacy in law enforcement, especially in certain parts of the country.
May I interject? Because I'm glad you brought that part up. People will be like, oh, I see these white supremacists marching and causing trouble and protesting and doing this. Why aren't the cops doing anything? Because most of those cops would be right fucking there with them if they weren't on duty. They'd be right there. And people keep acting like that's not a thing. Like, it has taken, everybody's like, oh, all these Black Lives Matter is a terrorist group. Antifa, which stands for anti-fascism, is a terrorist group. But with the KKK, everybody's like, well, let's not label that just yet. Like, what the fuck you mean? They're historically a terrorist group.
By the way, the President of the United States, his father was arrested in the 1920s marching with the KKK in New York.
Yeah, but he won't.
You can look that up. That's the household the President of the United States, who currently occupies the office, grew up in.
Mm-hmm.
For those of you who, I don't know how many white ringers I have on watching my show. I'm getting angry just thinking about this. I want you to continue watching my show. I respect you, but you might want to consider your worldview may need some alteration. Here's the thing, Jay, that I've learned during this pandemic. People would rather turn a blind eye to the death of others than admit they're wrong about shit. That's the actual lesson I've learned from this pandemic. Whether it's because of the virus, because of police brutality, white supremacy, whatever. Nobody wants to admit they weren't right. That's what we're really dealing with a lot of these people who can't pull their head up out of their fucking, their place. So I hope you will reconsider, those of you who are watching this who have different politics than Jay and I, that maybe you might have been mistaken. Anyway, my friend, thank you for joining me, and tell us what you've got going on right now. Share some of your projects.
Thank you first and foremost, Steve, seriously, for having me, man. This is fun. I'm glad I got a chance to catch up with you in the midst of all this crazy shit, I hope you keep doing everything you're doing and keep making your strides the way you're doing it. Like, seriously, this is a good platform. Thank you for having me on it. For me, right now, it's just movie reviews whenever movies are coming back out. When those come back out. So I'll be doing more movie reviews. Those will be available on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/JAYWashington80. My live show, like I said, Winston A. Marshall and I, we do every Tuesday, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. It's called Blurs in the Hood. We cover pop culture, entertainment, the news, everything. We have a real conversation for an hour, but we have a whole lot of fun in the midst of it. So it's youtube.com/Blurs in the Hood, BLERDS, the letter NTHEHOOD, and on twitch.tv, the same extension, Blurs in the Hood. I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Mr. J Washington, MRJAYWASHINGTON. I will be on Rotten Tomatoes again soon, doing another binge battle for them. I got a couple things I'm auditioning for. The Mad Titan podcast is my podcast. I get you caught up on all the things that happen in the Marvel and DC live action and cinematic universes. I'm about a week and a half behind because there wasn't much to talk about, but I'm waiting to do this week. So I'm going to cover DC fandom and all that other stuff. And I think that's about it. Just really stay tuned to me on socials with everything I got coming up.
Well, thank you, Jay. Thank you for being on the podcast with me. You've been a great guest. Really different conversation than I've had with anybody else, whether it's about police brutality or about Marvel. I don't think I've had a conversation yet with anybody about that. So I have a show coming up that I'm going to promote real quick. On Saturday night, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, I'll be doing a Facebook Live comedy show about how everything's fucked up in the world. Hopefully, I'll be able to make that funny. We'll see. Tune in, pay your $10, and join us on Facebook Live. If you want all the details, check all my social media. I'll have the posters on there and everything. And again, I want to thank my guest, Jay Washington. Brother, thank you so much for coming on. And No Idea Zone. We'll see you next week.
Thank you, brother.
Peace.